Hello, everyone, and welcome to eCommerce Growth Show. It's my honor to have so many emotions because our guest today, Thomas Bartke, is not here yet. But with the hope that he's going to join us, I'm going to say a few words about him. So he's the creator of Trackify, the leading app for managing Facebook pixels for e-commerce in Shopify stores and beyond. He was instrumental in launching and growing multiple 7- and 8-figure brand stores on Shopify and provides consulting to grow and scale with Facebook ads. And that was the teasing for today's guest. Hopefully, he's going to be with us pretty soon so that I can invite him on the screen. But until then, I can do something because I have to entertain you. I feel like a news guy which has no prompter, right? So my idea for today's session, if Thomas is going to be delayed, is to simply ask which one of you is courageous enough to have a live website critic for his website. So you just need to type in your website, and then I'm going to share my screen and give some insights about the user experience from my perception and some tips and tricks so that you can improve your website until Thomas will be able to join us. Okay, so I've just invited you on the screen. Perfect, and we have a website to speak about after this. After Thomas hopefully will be able to join us.
There you go.
Perfect. So here we are, Thomas. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to be in late.
No worries. So Thomas, the first question for you while we are here is how you first got into the digital landscape at the beginning.
Oh, that's a really good question. Wait a minute. Can you hear me okay? I have an icon here that said tap to unmute sound, but I'm good, right? I'm fine?
Yeah, you're good. Okay, I can hear you. No worries.
Right. Awesome. Okay, well, that's a really good question. I was dabbling in internet marketing and had been for like a long time. I'm originally a full-time musician, and I was born and raised in Germany. And when I moved from Germany, I moved to California, to Los Angeles. And I was in the film music industry there, and I had a lot to do with computers. And because of that, I had kind of an affinity to internet marketing. I dabbled and I did different things. I was like following Frank Kern like 20 years ago, and kind of got my feet wet in internet marketing then. And many years later, I was introduced to e-commerce, and I started selling T-shirts on Teespring. And that was my first like really bigger success. I had some success with affiliate marketing, internet marketing before then, but the Teespring, selling shirts, selling physical goods, e-commerce on Teespring, on the selling platforms, that gave me my first kind of like real breakthrough. And I had, I was trying to get more successful there, launching always new designs all the time for about a year and a half. And then I had a massive breakthrough with a design that I launched for the Pi Day of the Century, which happened on March 14th, 2015. And that was like a really blockbuster success. I sold something like 12,000 shirts of the same design over like a 3-week period. And that was awesome. And then from then, I took my e-commerce activities then from the platform selling to Shopify. And I started my first Shopify store in April of 2015. And there I discovered that there was some insufficiency in the way that Shopify wasn't really providing a good solution for managing the Facebook pixel and helping you to retarget and really follow up with your viewers and your abandoned carts, people who had put stuff in their cart and so forth. And so I saw a real need there to help Shopify store owners in general, help myself in general, but then also help other Shopify store owners to make a better system of putting the Facebook pixel events into the typical e-commerce funnel of where someone visits your product page, you want to track them there, you want to track that they're putting the product into the cart, and then of course you want to track when they buy the product. And back in the day, in 2015, I don't know how many here on the call were even, probably okay, alive, yes, but already in e-commerce or already in internet marketing, where you kind of had some awareness of tracking scripts and pixels. Anyway, the way it was then, Facebook had multiple pixels, and each pixel ID was tracking one specific event. And so whenever that pixel ID fired, it meant something specific, and you could not change that meaning. So the meaning could be put a product into, visit a product, right? Look at a product. You had to fire one pixel ID. When you put the product into the cart, you had to fire a different pixel ID. When you purchase that same product, you had to fire yet a different pixel ID. So it was really difficult to make sure that you don't fire the wrong pixel at the wrong time, because then it would track the wrong thing, right? If you fire the purchase pixel ID on the product visit page, you think, oh, I have a bunch of sales, but you assign the wrong meaning to the wrong event, right? So then that's when we came up with the software that I had built originally for myself to manage which pixel would fire where. And then you could, I discovered that, oh, you get actually better results if you fire a different pixel for different products. Then you can actually track it to a specific campaign where you run certain campaigns to one product. You fire this pixel that is specific to that product, and you fire it for another product, you fire a different pixel. So all of a sudden you need 3 more pixels for each product. And it was very, very complicated. And that software, I named that Trackify. And that software then basically was there to allows me and also other Shopify store owners to manage multiple pixels and their events and what they mean within your Shopify store. So the story then is pretty long from there to where Facebook developed the new generation of Facebook Pixel that is the same that we have today, where it's basically you can use one pixel ID and assign all kinds of different meanings to them by using different event types, and then structuring the data that is collected with each event by assigning different event parameters. So there's a lot of things there, and I want to talk about that a little bit more in detail. But so Facebook made that change, then Shopify implemented that basic integration for the Facebook Pixel, and Trackify continued to evolve and develop more to help people create more specific, more fine segmented user behavioral data for the Shopify store. And yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about what you can do with that and how this then leads to larger campaigns, easier scaling, easier targeting, and all that. So after I did, go ahead.
No, sorry to interrupt you, Thomas. I was just curious, why do we need a different tracking? Because not all the people here are acquainted with pixel tracking in Facebook. Why can't we just look at a single event, which is the conversion? Can you please explain to our audience why?
Yeah, sure. So everything that your visitor does in your store, it's even independent of e-commerce. You can even apply the same general logic to affiliate marketing or selling information products or lead generation, whatever it is. So everything that a visitor does on your website or on your shop is a conversion, right? When they visit a product, that's a conversion that you can. It's a specific interaction, right? It's a specific action that they take, and so Facebook considers that a conversion. When they do something else, when let's say they change the variable, they pick a different color or a different model or a different package of your product, that would be, some sort of customization of their experience where it shows that they're actually more interested than someone who just looks at the product and bounces right back off. So that would be an interesting thing to track as well as a conversion, right? Customized product. If they put the product in the cart, that's another layer, another step of engagement and interaction that they take. So that's another conversion. So every step along the way where they come from showing some interest in your product, because after all, they clicked on your ad and visited your website, to where they ultimately finally actually buy or make some sort of final conversion, that we tend to kind of only focus on that, right? If we want a registration, we focus on registration for a webinar. If we want a lead, because we're doing lead gen, we focus on the lead event. If we want to make a sale, we usually focus on the purchase event. However, all the steps in between that lead to that, from when they first click the ad to when they make that final conversion that we always tend to just call the conversion, they're actually also conversions, and they can also be tracked. And tracking them makes sense, because then you can segment people out and retarget them depending on what they've already done. And so you'll find that people who are further along in your funnel, if you want to call it that, at least from the first click on the ad to the final purchase, they're actually cheaper and easier to reach again when you retarget them. But then you would have to isolate that group of people so that your retargeting ads don't have to run to everyone again, but they just retarget that smaller group, that smaller audience that have already taken that specific action.
Great. Another interesting aspect is, if you allow me to observe this, Thomas, is that as our audience is more focused on the conversion rate optimization part, the micro conversions are really important in your endeavor to actually optimize for the big conversion. Let's say if you are an e-commerce and you're looking for the final transactions, you would like to track the people that have added the product into the basket, let's say, or that they've stayed such amount of time on a certain amount of time on certain products which are more expensive, and so on. And then you could remarket them with specific Facebook campaigns. So what you're exposing here is the capacity, the power to actually craft and orchestrate different remarketing scenarios for various audiences which are closer to the end transaction, but everything is like a domino, right? So everything comes to the first visit, and then according to the customer behavior, you'll be able with your technology to actually craft different campaigns for various audiences, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. So there are two aspects to that, and that kind of leads into what you can do with these different audiences once you've tagged them. Like in the big picture, in the big overall scheme of things, there are two aspects. One is using different audiences as leverage for refining your targeting. That's one thing. And the other thing is optimization. So optimization is a very tricky thing that is essentially different from targeting, separate from targeting, right? For optimization, what you usually do is you optimize for your final result that you want. And that is typically going to give you the best overall ROAS if you actually optimize your campaigns for what you finally want them to do. So in this case, in e-commerce, that's typically purchase. When you optimize for some of the other steps in between, you usually have a little bit lower ROAS, because you're going to have more people that do these in-between steps, and they tend to not necessarily convert for purchase as much as you would like. So there's a difference because of that. What I'm trying to flesh out here is the difference between what you use the events for in terms of optimizing your campaigns versus what you use the data for in terms of extracting that audience, segmenting that audience, taking that audience out, and being able to then retarget them and target that audience separate. So you might always optimize for the purchase event, but when you take out the people that have added the product to the cart and you run a separate campaign to them, that's going to be a better way to use your advertising dollars than if you would just always target the cold traffic and just leave everybody in that same group and keep targeting them no matter what they have done already. I always compare this to an email list. With an email list, it's usually pretty easy to understand for people, because if you have an email list, you typically don't send the same email copy all the time to everybody, to the whole list. What you do there is you segment which people have already done certain things and have already kind of moved closer to where you want them to convert and have built a relationship, have built some trust with you. And then you're going to send them different emails. And the people who haven't taken these steps yet, you send them a different email. So what that implies is, and with email, it seems like logical to everyone, right? Everyone understands that for emails. Well, why not do the same thing with your Facebook audiences that you can reach? But just like with your emails, what you have to do in order to really accomplish this is you have to not only, so for one thing, you have to find the people that you're going to send the different email, the different message to, right? So let's say the add to cart people. But then also you have to use that same audience that you're now targeting with a different ad to eliminate them from the big group of people that get the other message, right? The original message, the cold traffic message. So you want to use the same audience for two purposes. One is to retarget these people with a different message, and one is to eliminate these people from your cold traffic ads. And you can and you should do this at every step. Wherever you have a significant progress from one behavior to the next behavior that you want along your funnel, whenever you have a significant progress from one step to the next, you should do that kind of segmentation where you tag them with one thing and then they get a different message, but at the same time you use that audience to take them out from your cold traffic. Another really good example for that, which many people don't do, is grabbing your audiences that have watched videos. Okay, so assuming that you run video ads, which you should, and one big reason for why you should do that is what I'm about to explain, because you can measure how much of the video these audiences have watched. And so the audiences that have already watched a certain amount of your video, you can assume that they're more interested in it than others, even though they may not have clicked yet, but they already have seen something. They already have seen your product. They already have seen your brand, right? So they already have more of a relationship than anyone who has never seen your video, right? So now we're talking about kind of shades of gray, the people who have never heard anything about your product or your brand or your company, versus the people who have not really taken any significant action, but they have maybe watched a minute of your video that was maybe 5 minutes long, or maybe they have watched 3 minutes of the video, right? So then it's very significant to isolate that audience of people who have already some recognition of your brand, your product, your company, and craft a different message for them. And at the same time, take them out of the other audience that you target, that you want to reach more and more people who have never seen your video. Okay. So what that does for you when you do this is two things. Number one, it gives a refined message to the people who have already interacted some with your brand, and that's good. And the second thing that's also really good is by taking that group out of the cold audience, you force Facebook to look for more people to show the video to. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, Facebook tends to go, oh, we already know this guy was already here. Let's show them that video again. And so there's somewhat of a retargeting algorithm already built into when you run the same thing to the same group of people without ever eliminating some from them. But that's actually kind of a lazy way to make it easy for Facebook, right? Because if you send a different message to them and at the same time remove them from the other ads, Facebook has to work harder on keeping that volume going that you have on the cold traffic ads. So it's going to look for more people who haven't watched the video yet. The other ones that have already watched it are taken out from that, so Facebook can no longer reach them with the original message. And there you go. So this is much better. You get better reach, you get more new people, and it's a much more powerful way, therefore, to scale your campaigns when you do that.
That totally makes sense. I want to ask you something, Thomas, regarding the from a larger perspective. Do you think that at this moment, the we have two types of e-commerce companies: the ones which are doing, or three types, right? The ones which are doing really great, and the demand for them because they are selling either essentials or new essential products, like, I don't know, yoga pants or anything like this,
Right.
is higher. And on the other end, we have e-commerce companies which have a lower, much more lower demand, and we have the average companies. What is your suggestion for nailing down Facebook ads for the first category? So for companies which are doing really great right now, because at this moment we are seeing that there's a lot of dynamics in this space. But what is your advice for them about how to craft good campaigns, besides the tracking and the way to further address them according to the step they are in the funnel?
So the question is, what should companies do that already are very successful to further scale? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that seems like almost a redundant question, right? It's like the successful companies are either successful,
because this is not going to be forever. That's what I'm stating, right? So the demand that we are seeing right now is not forever. In 2-3 months from now, on the recovery period, people will go again to the bricks and mortar. So mainly the companies which are seeing now double or triple orders are not going to see this in August, or at least I presume.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an interesting question. It really plays to the question of how this whole coronavirus situation is going to affect us in e-commerce on the tail end of whatever recovery period we expect. And that's a difficult question, because it involves, speculating on what you were doing. I think many of us were kind of surprised about how e-commerce went really into a boom, where because of big companies were getting out of Facebook ads because they can't do business right now, travel companies, whatever, companies that we are always in competition with, right? So they withdrew their advertising budgets. Therefore, demand for advertising space has significantly declined. On the other hand, people are sitting at home. They don't have anything to do. They go on Facebook and browse. And you have to realize that what that does is it massively increases the availability of advertisement space, right? The advertisement space in Facebook or other online online advertisement platforms is determined by how many people there are on the platform, but also massively by how much time those people spend browsing, right? It's not like a billboard on the freeway that is there no matter what, but it is multiplied, it is generated. The advertisement space that's available to advertisers on Facebook is literally generated by how much time people spend on their newsfeed and on Facebook, right? So that's important to realize that the more people are now spending time online, there's a massive increase on available advertisement space. And at the same time, the demand by advertisers to show their ads in that massively increased advertisement space is reduced. So it's a huge difference in the balance between supply and demand.
Supply and demand, yeah.
Right? So So with that said, that's the explanation for why it's so much cheaper right now in many verticals to advertise on Facebook. On the other hand, I was somewhat surprised that not everything is going to Amazon, right? So people actually buy a lot in Shopify stores and individual merchants that have their own, however large the shops are, it doesn't really matter. If you run an ad and you have good targeting and you target a type of audience that is ready to buy with a product that is within the range of where this is a good impulse purchase, or where they actually need that, what you're offering, then you're good, you're golden, right? You have low advertisement costs compared to before, and you have higher conversion rate compared to before. And it's really a combination of what I just explained, the supply and demand thing, and on the other hand, your targeting. The targeting is always a balance of the people you actually target with your ads and what you're targeting them with, right? That's also important to note. If your targeting is only as good as what your offer actually offers to those people. So you just have to stay on top of that curve, and as things go on, maybe going back to normal, I'm not that confident that normal is all that nearby yet, right? So I think the best thing you can do is build, be really aggressive in your marketing now, build your audiences as forward-leaning as possible so that you have a cheaper way to get back to them, where you can extract more revenue from the same audiences that you have already built, either by retargeting them on Facebook or even by retargeting them with email, where it's a lot cheaper to reach them over the long term.
Great. We have a question from Rashad. What if you're just starting your e-commerce and you're not familiar or not an expert on Facebook advertising? How can you get started with all of this?
Yeah, well, that's a big question too. So getting started is always, it starts with selecting a good product and doing good product research and coming up with a product that is attractive and easy to buy, easy to sell, easy to show the benefits. And it's just awesome when you can create this gotta have it sensation, without hyping it up, but just the idea or the presentation is such that it's incredibly attractive to the person that you're targeting. And so that will increase your engagement. Engagement on Facebook always increases your conversions, and it also always decreases your costs, right? There's always, we talked about that before, there's always a currency that I call engagement currency, right? So there's always the bid amount that you put on there in real currency, but then if your engagement currency is high, your actual monetary currency can be much lower than if you have to bid with a relatively low engagement currency. So in other words, to say that more simply, when your ad is more engaging, when more people react and click like and click on it and comment and share the post or whatever, so all these are engagements on Facebook. When your ad achieves that they have more engagement, it's going to be a lot cheaper to reach more audiences for the same amount of money. So that's a good thing to do that. And then once you have engagement, you have to make sure that the product is actually a product that people want to buy, right? Sometimes there are products or ads that people engage with, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they would buy it. So that's another kind of test that you have to make, that when you have a great engaging product and great engaging ad, is that actually a product that people will buy at the price, at the deliverability that you're offering, and so forth, right? So that's an important factor there. But yeah, I mean, you always start out by testing some ads, and in the beginning you kind of forced to test more for engagement, because Facebook won't let you optimize yet for a purchase. If you've never had a purchase on your Pixel before, you can't just start by optimizing for a purchase right away. So you have to run some ads and just kind of get your feet wet, see what the audience that you have in mind will engage more with. And that's a good experience to go kind of through that phase. You don't need a whole lot of budget or money for that, but you need to have that experience and to warm up kind of your ads, your page, and your pixel, because you want to create people, pixel events, but from people that come over to your website, do certain things, fire pixel events, and that will then lead to your ability to actually optimize for those conversions.
Okay, we have some more questions, Thomas. Someone is asking, can I put pixel in email? I think.
You could technically, but it won't do you very much good, because one requirement for the pixel to work well is that Facebook can actually identify the Facebook user, right? So it's like if you fire a pixel event while the Facebook user is not logged into Facebook, then the pixel event will get to Facebook, but they won't know who it connects with, which Facebook user it connects with. And so that means in that case, that pixel event, which would technically go into your audiences that you might be able to retarget, but because Facebook has no clue which Facebook user that is, it can't use that event to retarget the person that triggered it. So therefore, putting pixel events in emails, typically, if you can even get it fired in the person. So the idea usually, I think there are two ideas behind that question. One is to embed it in an email so that you could actually fire the event when the person opens the email, let's say in Gmail in the browser, and it would fire there. So there are technical problems there, and that doesn't work all the time because Gmail just filters out those types of embedded scripts that would track internally who opens the email by firing that to Facebook. So that's there are barricades against doing that. But then the other question would be, okay, what if I embed a pixel into the link clicks so that I could at least track the link clicks? Or what if I put the pixel on the landing page where I get clicks from the email? And so even that, when you're sending emails and people come click and they load your website, and you can obviously fire your Facebook pixel there, but even that leads to relatively low attribution rate, which means Facebook doesn't really know where your people are coming from and or who those people are, because they're sometimes, most of the times, a lot of times not logged in, and so you won't have a valuable audience for retargeting when you fire these pixels from with regards to those email traffics.
Okay. Well, we have one more question. Can you please share some examples of targeting, let's say, for home appliances, from Shamil Nasir?
Well, there's always two different ways to start cold targeting, right? One is to just kind of go generically broad with demographics. So like, who makes the buying decision? Is it the woman or the man in the household? What age range might they need for household appliances? And so that's one thing. And then the next level beyond that would be to research specific interests that are available for targeting on Facebook, and then go for that initially. So you want to somewhat narrow down at least your demographics, so gender and age range. And then you also want to narrow down at least somewhat your interest targeting. If there's an interest available, let's say kitchen appliances, or maybe even specific brands, then that would be a good starting point right there.
Excellent. We have more questions. Do I need the separate pixel if I run two niche on the same store? Example, jewelries and t-shirts.
That's a really good question. There are different ways to look at that and different ways to do that. Let's start with an example. If you have niches or products in the same store that are targeting a very different demographic, let's say one is targeting younger women and the other one is targeting older men, then it would be quite a good idea to separate them somewhat, so that in terms of optimization, you're giving Facebook a better hint on how to optimize for your conversions, right? So again, we need to kind of separate here. That's why I mentioned this earlier. Separate between what you're trying to do in terms of optimization, conversion optimization, and what you're trying to do in terms of targeting. For targeting, it's pretty simple, right? Targeting, okay, with a product that is for the younger women, you just narrow down your setting in your ad set targeting settings to only isolate that group of people. And the other ad set might then only advertise to older men, right? However, when you're working with one pixel that has the combined data of the young women and the old men on the same pixel, it does make it a little bit trickier for Facebook to run optimization based on the data that is on the pixel, right? There's always the data that's on the pixel or that's been collected with the pixel. There's sometimes a little bit of a semantic disagreement of if you can say that any data is on the pixel. But the point is, the pixel that is used for optimizing, right? There is data on there. There's data that has been collected with that. And if there are, let's say, 200 purchase events of the younger women and 200 purchase events of the older men, then Facebook has to do more work to optimize each of these campaigns for the separate segments. Whereas if you have separate, so now there are two ways to accomplish separation there. One way is to still use the same pixel, but using custom conversions. So what custom conversions do is they're not separate pixels, but they're filtering out the events on the same standard conversion of the pixel, of the one pixel that you're using. Okay, so you could create a custom conversion that filters out only the purchases of the younger women, and then another custom conversion that filters out only the purchases of the older men. Now, when you optimize your campaign for those custom conversions, Facebook doesn't get confused, or they don't need to do harder work in sorting out which purchase events on that whole pixel are actually going to be our criteria for the optimization. But rather, it can then just look at only the conversions that match the filter in the custom conversion and go for that. And the other way to go about that is to actually, what was mentioned in the question, to actually run separate pixels, where you use one pixel only for that type of conversion. So presumably that pixel would then only collect the conversions from the younger women, and another pixel that runs only that fires only for the other conversions, and so it would collect only the conversions for the older men. And there's a little bit of trickery to that, because as you can see, you have to manage when these pixels fire, right? So if you just use two pixels and you fire them for all conversions anyway, then that doesn't do the job. You actually have to prevent the pixel that fires for young women from firing also for older men, and vice versa. So you actually have separations. You isolate the data on that one pixel and don't have any of the other data even collected on that pixel, right? So that's the difference between using two pixels and using custom conversions on the same pixel. The concept of using different pixels really comes from the situation that we see on selling platforms like Teespring. Gearbubble right now is very, very successful and very prominent. So what happens there is that different sellers each use their own pixel to fire for the products that they're selling, right? And different sellers have different products, and different sellers have different pixels. So the pixels for one seller only fire for the products for that seller, and not for everybody else. And so you can emulate, and that works really, really well, right? So each seller can optimize for their specific campaigns, for their specific products, for their specific way, how they're putting their offer together, and how they're targeting on Facebook. And it works really well. And so why would that not work in your favor if you do the same thing, even though you have just one Shopify store, and now you're pretending like you're different sellers for different products, and you just run different products for that, right? So it totally makes sense that would be an optimization that makes it easier for Facebook to get you better results if it is already like that on the selling platforms. I can't hear you now for some reason. What happened? I think you muted yourself.
Okay, now you can hear me. I have a cat here, that's why. So I'm just muting myself when she's asking me for something. Okay, so I have a question here. We are focusing on customer segmentation. So we've seen a lot of traction for our e-commerce stores by segmenting their audience according to their customer behavior. So we have, let's say, the true lovers, which are the customers that bought most recently, most frequently, and they have the biggest lifetime value. Can you do separate campaigns for them and also eliminate them once they are doing a conversion so that you are not addressing them again? So can you do that on Facebook?
Yeah, for sure. So are you doing this with custom conversion versions? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so what am I saying is that we at OmniConvert, we empower our e-commerce companies to do customer segmentation. So we grab all this data around their customers and we empower them to segment them differently and then readdress them differently on their website. And I was asking if you can do something like you have a very important customer that is pissed off, so he rated you lousy on the NPS. He rated you 0 out of 10. And you want to do something automatically on the Facebook ad so that you can say, hey, we're sorry, and here's a voucher for you so that we made up with you.
Yeah, well, you could do that, but the first necessary step that you need to take for that is that you track that action with a separate pixel event, right? So you would have to have a way to identify the buyers that leave you bad feedback. And conversely, also the buyers that leave you really good feedback. It's relatively easy to identify repeat buyers. You can build audiences based on multiple purchases or total conversion value, like lifetime conversion value. That's relatively easy to do with the Facebook pixel. But beyond that, you would have to fire separate events that enable you to distinguish them. One other thing that you could do, if you know which of your buyers they are by email, you could segment them in your email list and then upload that segment to a Facebook audience. And then you could also, again, target them directly and use that same segment to exclude them from certain messages and target them with special messages for something else. I think you had Klaviyo on this broadcast before, right? They're like leading email CRM system that has built-in automation already, where you can segment the emails in Klaviyo and then automatically pipe them into audiences in Facebook that dynamically update. So that's otherwise a little bit, laborious. Like there's manual labor in that you have to keep let the audience on Facebook updated. You would have to, periodically just upload that list again from your segment manually. And apps like Klaviyo have that already built in and automated. One other thing that we should mention is, so far we only mentioned the audience segmentation for the purpose of A, retargeting them directly with a different message, and B, taking them out of the other ads that you're running to the caller traffic. But one really, really important function of these audiences, of the same custom audiences, is that you're using them for leverage into Facebook. So that's when you hand a group of people back to Facebook and say, hey, Facebook, give me some people that are similar to these. These are called lookalike audiences. And the way they work is really cool. It's like it looks at the audience criteria, at the criteria of the audience that you hand in as a base audience, and it then matches people that are Facebook users that are not those same people that are in the audience, but that they have something in common with those people. And so then there's an algorithm where they give you, the 1% of people in a specific country or in multiple countries that are most similar to the people that are in the base audience. So this is a very, very important feature. And you could also do that in both ways, in both the way that you want to reach more people who have done something, but maybe even you want to use lookalike audiences to exclude people, right? You could build a lookalike audience from people who have given you bad reviews. and just exclude them and see if your buyers will overall become better buyers that are a better match for your products.
Yeah, this is music to my ears, Thomas, because we are actually exploring here at Amiconvert with our larger customers, ways that they could look at ideal customer profiles, because
yes,
we are obsessed about customer retention, but there are some customers which are actually toxic to your company, because they are asking for refunds, they are returning the goods, they are giving you bad ratings, they are giving a lot of tickets to your support team, and you don't want those kind of customers. And once you are doing a general lookalike audience by all the customers that ever bought from you, you will get average customers with your campaigns. But if you can cluster this kind of audiences, then you will be able to actually say to Facebook, give me more of those good customers which have high lifetime value, low return rates, and
exactly right.
And so on and so forth.
We have had really good results with using smaller segments of our audiences that have done something good, right? Something desirable. Doesn't always have to be purchase. It could also be something like stayed on the website for longer than others, right? Or something like, another interesting criteria that you can use to carve out better audiences than others is, if you, let's say you observe in your general stats in your store that your most successful days are Thursdays, or let's say Friday afternoon and Thursday afternoon and Saturday morning, right? So let's say this is the time frame where you have the highest conversions, the best people that are online then and are visiting your stores. That's when the business happens. So we have figured out a way to segment the audiences in such a way that you can only grab the people who have been in your store Thursday afternoon, Friday afternoon, and Saturday morning. And you make that audience a base audience that you then hand back to Facebook and say, give me more of those, right? So this is also an awesome way to build different custom audiences and then get better leverage through the lookalike audiences with them. It's a really cool way.
Excellent. Thomas, one last question around this topic, because I want to pick your brain longer, because we have more questions. One question is, how can you exclude? So once you are firing an event, and once you have a customer that has event A, let's say, can you do something that it's automatically excluded if it's triggering also event B? And where do you write these kind of scenarios?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very easy to do that. You just configure this in your ad set audience settings. You know, the audience settings where you set up which audiences you target is in your ad sets always, right? It's always in your ad sets. So in your ad sets, there is a place where you can select an audience that you want to target, like a lookalike audience or a custom audience. And in that same dialog, there's also a way to select an audience, but then you click exclude that audience. And so the turnaround here is, number one, you have to build the audience, right? So you go into your audience manager and build that custom audience that has event D or whatever, right? Whatever the event is that you want to exclude. And then you let this build for a moment so that there is an audience actually there that has some Facebook users on it. And then you go back into your ad set, edit your ad set where you edit your audiences. And then you can just select that audience, that custom audience, and select it for excluding it from these ads. So and then it gets automatically updated from then on, right? Every time someone triggers the event that puts them on that custom audience that you want to exclude, that audience gets dynamically updated. And so, you know, once you've set this up once, it'll just work for you all the time. Okay. And you might not want to exclude them forever, right? Maybe you just go and exclude them for the next 14 days or the next 30 days or whatever, right? And you can
exclude it. And can you exclude it until event C is occurring?
Until what?
So you have event A audience, then you want to exclude them if even B occurs, but you want to re-include them when even C occurs. So can you use if and or operators?
That's an interesting question. You would have to somehow remove them from the excluding audience. Otherwise, that doesn't work. There's not that sophisticated logic in there. So if you have excluded an audience and someone is still in that audience and you don't really have a way to remove them from that audience, then there's no way to. That's a very interesting question because, I mean, for example, with email lists that you've uploaded and turned into dynamic audiences, technically there you could remove them, right? So if you use a tool like Klaviyo and you have automated where a certain email segment that is determined by tagging or by certain actions, that segment is automatically piped into a custom audience on Facebook. Now, if you untag a person from that segment and it's actually removed from Klaviyo, from the Klaviyo segment, it would also be removed from the Facebook audience at that time.
Yeah, because it's working through their dynamic.
But there's no way to actually do this with the Facebook pixel. So with the Facebook pixel, you can only put people into an audience, but you can't take people out of an audience.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. How to set a pixel for segment of customer based on the amount they spend to make custom audience or lookalike audience of high spenders. So I've told you that you can do that with OmniConvert Reveal. We have this segmentation. So mainly after you have the segmentation on your end, you can use this kind of audiences. So we've just talked about it. We have one more question from Rashad. Is it sustainable to invest in ads right now to grow my e-commerce shop?
Absolutely. Now's the time. If you have something that people buy now, there's no better time than now. Sustainable, I mean, that's a different question. Sustainability is a different question, but why not make money now that you can make now, right? Just because you're worried about if it's sustainable.
Yeah. Maria, she's asking, what type of communication should a brand consider during this period on social media? A positive one, positioning the brand in a bright context, not so affected by the social events, or a more cautious one, communicating the preventing measures they have taken, news about what's new, etc.
Well, that depends a lot on what you're selling and what you're, if you're drop shipping and you're relying on delivery from China, your communication has to be much, much different than if you're manufacturing your products yourself and your delivery mechanism is close to the customer and where you are. I mean, it's going to be completely different. Building trust and being responsible in your communication is certainly a good way to generally build trust in your brand and your company. But yeah, I mean, it depends so much on your situation.
Okay, great. So we have a few more questions. What is your recommendation for brands that are selling non-essentials? How should they approach their advertising campaigns?
Well, non-essentials, it's not really determined by the product, right? Essential and non-essential is a quite random determination that governments have chosen to dictate some businesses to shut down versus others to remain open, and there's no reality to that, right? Essential, like haircuts are essential. At some point they become essential. Yet haircut stores were deemed non-essential in the strictest phase of locking areas down. Restaurants, even, I mean, restaurants are generally an essential component of our social lives, but they were deemed non-essential. So if you look at it from a purely e-commerce point of view, essential versus non-essential is different. It's like, okay, would people still want to buy a nice dress when they can't go out and show themselves in it? maybe that becomes an unessential item for the time being. I would research lists of trends in e-commerce by specific products if you want to really dial into that. I think, mostly if you have an e-commerce business already and you find yourself in a position where you happen to sell a type of product that has not that much demand right now due to different social interaction of people. Okay, well, there's two things that you can do. You can either just say, okay, I'm just going to shut down and give up for the moment, or you could say, well, what is related enough and what can I offer to the same audience that are later going to buy the other stuff that I normally sell? And what could I offer in my store for them to buy now? Because that's what they need now and that's what they would buy, right? So why get hung up with calling your product essential or unessential, or letting someone else call your product essential or unessential? Why not just shift your offers a little bit so that you can offer something that the same audiences that you want to target with your brand in general will buy something else from you in this time?
Yeah. One more question. Do you think it's possible to readdress visitors that previously visit your website and you have this only on Google Analytics through Facebook ads?
Well, there are some methods that you can use to cross-match them, right? The easiest method is always by using an email address. When you upload an email list, be that manually or through Klaviyo, whatever, through another tool, that is one way to put an audience back into Facebook and then leverage it with lookalike audiences and use it for retargeting. There's also a mechanism that is built into pixel events that's called advanced matching. So advanced matching is a trick that Facebook uses where you can pass personal data, such as an email address or a phone number or something like that, into the pixel event, and it's hashed, so Facebook can't really read the actual email. However, they are using the same hash that they can then match on their end. And essentially what they can do is, if there is another email address that is exactly like that and they can match that to a Facebook user, then they can identify the Facebook user. And that's why email list uploads work. And this is also a mechanism that you can use to increase Facebook's matching and retargeting capability for traffic that comes from off Facebook or where they're not logged into Facebook. So that's called advanced matching. There are different layers of that are a little bit complicated to go into, but that's definitely something you can use, a mechanism that you can use to improve retargetability on Facebook for traffic that didn't come from Facebook originally.
Perfect. Thomas, that was the last question. Thanks a lot for being part of e-commerce growth show. Where can people reach out to you if they have more
I was
questions?
wondering if we have 3 more minutes. I wanted to give you is that possible? Can I share my screen real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Let me see. I think your entire screen. Okay, there's one right here. There's one little topic that I thought would be interesting. Can you manage how this is showing to people?
Yeah, sure. You can go on because I've focused the audience on your presentation.
Okay, click to close message. Okay, great. Awesome. So there's one little topic that I wanted to talk about because it comes up so often, and that is what I call shadow attribution. So and I explained just really in 2 minutes here, the reason why up to 50% of the sales that happen today in your shop are hidden from your attribution, from your conversions that you can see in Ads Manager reports. And here is a screenshot, a snapshot from a chart from a report that we have generated. And what you can see here is these are view content events, add to cart event, initiate checkout event, and purchase events. And the blue portion of events are attributed in Facebook in Ads Manager to today, to the same day, to today. And the orange part of portion of each event are not attributed to today, but they are attributed to one of the past 28 days. And so that is enormous, because if you look at this here, I don't have it where I click on it and you can see it, but you can see here the blue line on the purchase ends just under 50%. That means that over 50% in this case of today's sales are not showing up on Facebook Ads Manager in today's numbers. And so people often say, well, what's wrong with that? My pixel is wrong. Something isn't integrated right. Something isn't implemented right. But what this is Facebook's mechanism for attributing an event that a conversion that happens today actually works by when the user that triggered the event took an action on Facebook ads, on the paid ads that they were seeing, that allows Facebook to attribute that event, right? So that's complicated. That sounds really complicated, but it's really straightforward. So in easy terms, it means if someone clicked on an ad 3 days ago and they buy something today, then that sale obviously happens in your store today. However, in Facebook Ads Manager reports, it's going to be included in the reports for 3 days ago. And so depending on what the buying cycle is, what the conversion cycle is in your particular shop, it can be that up to 50% or even more than 50% of your purchase events are attributed to prior days up to the last 28 days before today. And then Facebook will show them on these days, and they're really, really hard to see in Facebook. So that's why we created this tool here to help with this reporting. So that's a pretty cool thing. Sometimes people are really surprised to learn that relationship between what happens when the actual sale happens and when Facebook reports it, because the attribution event occurred on a different day. So I wanted to just kind of put that in here. And here, I want to just invite you to come on in over here, trackifyapp.com/2020difference, trackifyapp.com/2020-difference. This is a little landing page that invites you to learn something more about Trackify Analytics, and it invites you to come into the Trackify Slack team, which is a private Slack team, is a private Slack group where you have a lot of support between people. It's kind of geared towards Trackify users, but I want to invite your group to just come into that and see and get some feel for the interaction that we have there. You get immediate access to a 2020 analytics course that you can use in Trackify, but also outside of Trackify. It involves tagging your Facebook ads with UTM parameters so that you can get information better from Google Analytics and stuff like that. So there's some really cool stuff that you can learn there. And then you can just kind of get into our community of support and interaction in our private Slack team.
Perfect. So I've just shown this. There's a green button. You can go there directly if you push it under the window with Thomas. So that being said, we have to wrap up this episode. Thanks a lot for being part of e-commerce growth show, Thomas. And next Thursday, we'll see you all at 3 p.m. UK time with episode 4. We'll have someone really, really interesting in the e-commerce growth. So see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me, Val, and everybody on the call. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time. Thanks for your time. Talk to you later.